Whoa, now that's something I've never seen on the show before. But what really happened to the district attorney who went to TCAP?
The officers line up in formation and head to the back of the house.
We all knew who he was.
I never considered my brother's death a suicide.
Disclaimer, this video is strictly for educational purposes. The makers of this video do not condone or promote violence in any way, shape, or form. Let peace prevail. Lights, camera, and action. That's exactly what TCAP is all about. But one particular episode spiraled out of control before anyone could do anything about it. And what did it bring along? A lawsuit, a hearing, and, of course, loads of drama. Now, anybody who has watched this show knows exactly what happens in it. Several weirdos have fallen prey to the show's impeccable undercover stings. And if someone wants to know how to lure these morons to punish them in the worst possible way, then look no further than TCAP. From trapping these disgusting men to getting them arrested, the show has been legendary every step of the way. It's surprising to see that these bozos can come from any sphere of the society. While most were students or those who had recently lost their jobs, there were also those who shockingly held some of the most reputed positions within our society. What makes the show special is that the men caught on it are not the ones who only harbor vile thoughts. They are the ones that actually acted on those dirty thoughts. TCAP has definitely shaken up the lives of several men who were caught on it. But one man not only shook up the show, but its entire team and Hanson as well, right to their cores. Most episodes on the show wrap up with a decoy team handing over the awful men to the police. But this particular episode dragged NBC to court, no doubt. The decoy team had landed a big catch, but nobody expected that one lawbreaker would eventually bring down another high-profile offender. Yes, there was a lot that happened in this action-packed episode, but what happened after is even crazier. I'll be going over every detail, but before that, how did a TV show manage to get so complicated? How could TCAP work in collaboration with the cops and the law enforcement? Sit back, guys, this is gonna be one hell of a ride. The dawn of the 21st century came in with a demand to put some vile creatures behind bars. Yes, I call them creatures because such individuals don't deserve to be called men. With the rise of one of the best means of communication to have ever been established, the internet, people from around the world were now able to connect like never before. But sadly, there were those who utilized this remarkable invention to fuel their vile intentions. Soon enough, there was a steep rise in the number of horrendous actions being committed by people from all walks of life, and the target? The younger and vulnerable population of the country. The spread of such lewd actions within the society compelled the need of strict actions and even stricter laws. While the law enforcement was doing its best to curb such obscenity from spreading, NBC Dateline stepped up for the challenge to take these morons down. What began was a series of stings that worked closely with the law right beside them. Yep, the law was involved with the operation, as the police department themselves worked hand in hand with the producers of the show. The sting was being conducted throughout the US, and the crew went far and wide before setting up the sting houses in unsuspecting areas of the neighborhood. Most of these houses were located in remote areas, and this only helped further solidify the intention of those weirdos who were willing to go to any lengths, literally, to meet a person much younger. The decoy team that was set up was not only backed up by the police, but they were also being given support from a watchdog called Justice. The organization was established in 2002 with the rise of cybercrimes. They based their operations out of California and Oregon. But for the purpose of the show, they actually dedicated an entire crew to work alongside the decoy team. Armed with both the watchdog organization and the cops, TCAP was now all set to catch the men committing filthy crimes. All they needed now was a face, a presenter who not only believed in their cause, but also had a command of his own. But guess what? Hanson wasn't just the face of the show, he was actually the one who pitched the idea to the producers. And he revealed this in an interview where he said,
And so I pitched the story, and it wasn't meant to be a completely different show. It was meant to be, a segment for Dateline.
Once it kicked off, Dateline made sure they had a new date every other day. And this only doubled and even tripled with time as the show gained immense popularity. The first two investigations that were conducted were the only operations where the men were allowed to leave, but they had to face a few consequences. One, that their faces and actions would be aired on national television, and the other that all the video and transcripts would be handed over to law enforcement, which would eventually lead to the arrest of the men. Now, the chances of these bozos fleeing and escaping the clutches of the law was very high in this case, which is why the producers of the show decided to include the police force into the show, thereby minimizing the chance for the jerks to escape. With the improvised version, the law enforcement would be right on the scene waiting to subdue the men who walked into the sting house. It was a foolproof sting operation, and once you got caught, there was no escaping out. out. By 2008, the show's viewership was at an all-time high, and it was their 4th year of putting some insane guys behind bars. It had gained so much attention that its cultural status was highlighted through sarcastic references and parodies, and other comedians, such as The Simpsons. If you missed it earlier, take a look at this.
Hello, Homer. How do you know my name? I'm Chris Hansen from To Catch a Credit Whore.
And when something features in The Simpsons, you know you're the talk of the town. But how does Hansen take all of this? Surprisingly, the TV presenter welcomes all these parodies with open arms. Here, listen to him yourselves.
Absolutely no issue with it whatsoever. I mean, look, if you want to make fun of me, great.
Yep, Hansen did not mind anyone taking digs at him, because one way or the other, they were still fueling his cause and creating awareness about jerks that loom at large in the society. From teachers to engineers, from lawyers to even a priest, throughout the show's history, the Decoy team had managed to capture a whopping 256 predators in a matter of just 4 years. But with every year that passed, the producers never expected that the show was heading towards its end. The show's first sting took place in Bethpage, Long Island, New York, eventually going to set up sting operations in Virginia, California, Ohio, Florida, Georgia, and Kentucky. The show grew to such heights that even some of the idiots who got caught on the show were aware of it too. But in 2008, things suddenly ended. To understand all the whys and hows, let me take you to the July of 2006. By this time, the online watchdog organization working in close association with Dateline had approached the Murphy, Texas Police Department to do a joint operation. Stay with me, guys, for this is where things get interesting. After finding success with the preliminary sting, the team put forth the idea of conducting a large operation under the label of TCAP. Since the previous operation was a success, and since the then Chief Bill Myrick eagerly seized the opportunity, the show set up the Sting House. But little did they know that this would be the last time they would be setting up such a sting operation. By early November 2006, the sting was being carried out, but without the knowledge of the mayor or the city council. The reason for this lies in the sting that took place earlier with the Murphy Police Department. You see, Chief Myrick had messed up and managed to get his car netted in the process. This meant that he was involved in some shady business himself, which is why he was so supportive of the sting despite the obvious disapproval from the other people in the department. During this time, an off-duty police detective by the name of Jimmy Patterson was hired in order to take charge during the sting. Patterson noted that the Murphy police were using excessive force and making mistakes, which meant that if there was any issue to arise, all these mistakes would be held accountable for in a court of law. Obviously, nobody paid any heed to Patterson's insights, despite hiring him themselves. Weeks before, the Decoy team volunteer posing as a 13-year-old boy had started to chat with a man going by the online tag of INXS00. Now, this person pretended to be a college-going dude who was actually really hot. How do I know this? Well, cause he shared pics of his chiseled body with the Decoy. And then came a really bizarre picture of his man tool, and the Decoy couldn't help but say,
"You're hot and in college. You can get all the guys you want."
The man even expressed his desire to go all the way, but not before talking about how he loved to cuddle and get wet all over. The man remained a mystery to everybody until on November 4th, when an NBC voice actor made a telephone contact with the mystery man. As it turned out, the man was no college student. He was identified as Louis William Conrad Jr., who was shockingly the assistant district attorney of Rockwell, the neighboring county. The conversation continued on for a while before Conrad backed out without giving away any hint. I'm guessing he was probably tipped off by someone. This is when he cuts contact, and the show had to do something they had never done before, since they knew that they had a really big catch. This would make the show all the more sensational, and of course, it would also create awareness in the public. The show executives jumped at the opportunity, because they already had enough evidence to arrest the attorney. And so, with the help of the Murphy Police Department, they decided to, for the first time, take the sting to the house of the loser himself. The very fact that he communicated his dirty intentions with a younger person was enough, and this is what the cop had to say.
The law in Texas specifies that the meeting itself never even has to occur.
This is when they messed up. The media crew coming on the site caused a lot of commotion outside, which led to Conrad being tipped off once again of the police arriving. When the cops arrived at the scene, this is what they found.
So it appeared as though someone was right there just a short while ago.
Yeah. Maybe watching television and working computer at the same time.
Which means Conrad was home. 45 minutes later, there was still no response and no movement from inside the house. What was he doing? doing? Sketching a plan to flee? With several cops lined up against his back door and surrounding him from all sides, Conrad didn't want to go through the public humiliation, which was due to follow his arrest. Of course, the 56-year-old prosecutor, who had sent several criminals behind bars, was well aware of the long haul he was in for, and nope, he wasn't prepared for it. Once the cops came face to face with him, the district attorney decided to off himself, and that's it. The next second, the attorney crashed to the floor before any of the cops could even get close to him. This was quite shocking for both the officers as well as the show executives who had greenlighted the operation. They were now responsible for causing such a commotion, and in the process, causing a man of high importance to take his own life. Conrad breathed his last in the air ambulance while he was being airlifted to Dallas Parkland Memorial Hospital, where he was eventually pronounced dead. This was one of the biggest commotions that had taken place in the history of the show. The aftermath of the death was shocking as well.
And nobody anticipated the kind of outcome that resulted, and certainly nobody wanted that kind of outcome.
First came the blame game. The chief of police and his boss started to lock horns over who handed out the permission for the arrest. However, the Murphy PD seized 3 encrypted computers from Conrad's house, which would later serve as key evidence in the case that would be filed by Patricia Conrad, Conrad's sister, under wrongful death. And this is what cops found.
On his laptop were at least 10 images of child pornography.
This amounts to 10 years in prison for each image. So now you can do the math. Clearly, Conrad didn't want to face the music of his dirty deeds and chose to take his life instead. And this is what Hansen thought about the shocking turn of events.
You don't want to see somebody do that. I don't feel responsible for it. I sleep well at night, and did after the fact. We completely reported on it the next morning.
Meanwhile, Conrad's sister got busy suing the show and all the people associated with it, and this is the statement she had to make in the local council, days after her brother's death.
I intend to fight as hard and as long as I can to prevent other people from becoming victims of such reckless actions as those taken by your employees.
The network tried its best to get information from the cops since all of it was locked away in the encrypted devices. Dateline later aired an episode which claimed that Conrad's laptop that had been found was the very same one he had used to chat with the decoy. But that's not the only thing that surfaced. The case of 23 other men who were caught too came to light, and things soon started to go south. Dateline had failed to provide the court with any of the chat logs and the videos for these 23 cases. It's shocking to see that such men were let go on the account of evidence, but what's more is that the Collin County District Attorney wasn't too keen on slapping on cuffs on these men after the ruckus the show had caused. Even the DA argued that the Murphy PD who were on the scene were merely acting as agents for the show itself, since they had no real legal permission to conduct such a sting, let alone arrest the men caught on the show. This meant that the show had lost its credibility and would soon have to shut down operations. But that's nothing compared to the blow that came next. In July of 2007, Patricia, the attorney's sister, filed her case against NBC Universal for $105 million under wrongful death lawsuit. The case was filed at the United States District Court to the Southern District of New York, where NBC would file for dismissal, but would be rejected by the judge. Later in 2008, the suit was amicably resolved, which is just a fancy way of saying that the concerned parties had come to an agreement without the involvement of the court. Now, NBC could have easily won the case if they had fought for it, but they chose to go with settlement instead of the trail, and this is the reason, Hansen explains.
When you settle a lawsuit like that, the settlement comes out of an insurance policy. If you go to trial, the money comes out of the news budget. A trial is much more expensive than a settlement.
Of course, nobody was happy with this decision, because that would mean all the years and effort that they had put into the show was for nothing. But it is what it is, and the show had to think about the greater good and call things off. And sadly, this led the network to lose one of its most popular shows. Despite all this, Hansen has no regrets about the Murphy sting. Even Chief Myrick claims that he himself was proud of the sting. The chief took complete responsibility of the sting and claims that Dateline and the online watchdog organization were merely a channel through which they were operating out of. In an interview that took place in 2022, Hansen also supported this statement when he claimed that the police were in charge of all aspects of the sting, while Hansen and his crew did their jobs on the side. This one incident had caused the entire show to go down in flames, but the one good thing was that they had managed to arrest 200 men with their sting operations. And remember when I mentioned the other high-profile guy who got caught through the Conrad sting? Yeah, so while the cops had possession of Conrad's laptop, they found something entirely different, unconnected but unlawful all the same. And this meant trouble for someone else. Wondering who? You gotta listen to this.
And also, what was found on that computer was evidence that helped convict Conrad's boss, the DA of that county, for financial mismanagement of the office.
Yay! Something good did come out of the sting after all. Conrad's boss then ended up doing time in federal prison for the crimes that exposed him on Conrad's laptop. The show received so much support from its viewers that although TCAP was signed off, several other spin-offs took its place. Meanwhile, Hansen too gained a lot of popularity from the show, and this helped him grow into a renowned name within the media industry. The TV presenter then went on to host similar shows, and has been continuing to do so for over 2 decades now. If you want to catch more crazy moments from TCAP, make sure to drop a like on this video, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. This is where I sign off for the day. Have a good one, you guys.